Thank you, Robert. My first question is the typical one you could ask a jazz musician. And by the way, you are the guest of a jazz festival. How do you work with technique and inspiration, composition and improvisation? I think both these aspects are part of your work.
My instruments are not the classical instruments a jazz musician would use. My instruments are a bit different. They are 40-year-old computers, but I see some similarities. First of all, at the end, the common interest is music. And music is about structure, it is about harmony, melody, rhythm, and also about an interaction with the audience. And all these things I can do with these machines too. And the main difference is that a lot more things that musicians would do have to be pre-programmed, because this is more or less a little ensemble here. And I see myself not so much as a musician here on stage, but as a composer and a conductor. What I'm doing during the concert is I am conducting this piece. And there is room for improvisation, and improvisation is very important to me. Every evening is different. I play some pieces, so these pieces are my standards, if you like, but I articulate them. I can play them faster, I can play them slower, I can play them in a very quiet way, almost intimate, or I can play them very brutally. And this articulation is what turns the score into the music. So what's inside the computer is the score, but what I do in the concert is I play the score.
How did you fall in love with the machine?
Well, I come from a family of engineers and I'm very used to machines. But for me, machines are very poetic beings. I mean, we are here in this fantastic building, and this is not just a building. It has an aura. It has a symmetry, proportions. And these old machines, for me, they are the result of a lot of people putting a lot of dedication and love into it. And when I play with these machines, I interact with the ideas of other people. And for me, this is very important and inspiring. I am in a dialogue with those machines, just as much as I would be in a dialogue with a grand piano. I have an idea what I want to do, but there's limits. There's limits on the grand piano because it sounds like a grand piano. I only have 10 fingers, and these machines have their limits, and the act of composing or the act of performing is navigating within those limits, playing with those limits, trying to overcome them, trying to get better within the limitations, trying to find something beautiful that is a result of the interaction. Without those machines, I wouldn't have the inspiration. So it's a dialogue.
The artistic research in the digital art scene is more and more interconnecting audio and visuals. Which is your current approach to this relation?
I started to work with those machines because I was very fascinated by this very simple graphics. These machines can only display a very limited number of so-called characters. And if I want to draw something, I have to use these things. It is very similar to a musical scale in a way. And I always wanted to do something that explores this specific aesthetics. And so I started exploring the visual side. And at the beginning I thought it's going to be an installation. And the more I worked with this project, the more I got the idea that it has to be a concert. And I started to also figure out what I can do sonically with these machines. And at some point I was confident enough that I can do a concert with them. And I also figured out that I need more than one computer to do this. And this is how this thing became alive.
There's lo-fi music recorded with vintage equipment. There's also, as you told us, electronic music made with old devices. Was there anything of the possibility given by those technologies that we were missing at the time? And then, is there a poetic of the limits?
Yeah. The limits are interesting because they force me to think about the core of an idea. If you cannot do much, then everything you do becomes important. If you only have 3 things you can arrange in a space, you spend a lot of time thinking about where to place these things exactly. If you have 50 things, then your focus changes. So the limitations of these machines, they made me being really focused and paying attention to what comes out of them. I found this very rewarding because it created ideas. It is very interesting that limitations can be a very good strategy to come up with ideas.
You took part of the creation of Ableton Live. Clearly now, after more than 20 years since its birth, a point of reference for electronic music creation. In your opinion, which have been its most important merits and contribution to contemporary music?
I think the most significant contribution of Ableton Live is 2 things. The one thing that we suggested a different way of thinking about music, a more playful way. Before Ableton Live, the concept of music with computers was mainly recording. And recording requires that you are already a skilled musician. You have to play an instrument which you can record. But you can be a really interesting composer who is not a good player. And our software allowed people who have good ideas but cannot play an instrument to occupy themselves with questions of structure, of music in a new way. And this is influenced, of course, by the electronic music culture of the early 1990s. But it's also influenced, of course, by ideas that are much older, like also in parts ideas of jazz, but also ideas coming from musique concrète, ideas coming from the free improv scene. Just this idea of I have material and I need to find a way to play with this material. I think this is the main contribution. The other contribution is electronic music was something that was very expensive and very difficult to do 50 years, 40 years ago. If everything you need to create a lot of interesting music can be done with a relatively cheap laptop, you open music to people who cannot afford a big studio. So a lot of the people we enable to make music are people who are somewhere and make music in their bedrooms and are capable of expressing themselves and share this and bring it on stage. And therefore, it's a liberation. We turned electronic music into something that is similar to playing the guitar.
And how do you see the latest trends and developments in this field? How do you imagine them? Wider possibilities, more simplified access, and more democratic use, maybe? I'm a bad visionary, so I don't know what people will do. But the more technology allows people to express themselves, the more people will, of course, use it. The one criticism that a lot of people had about electronic music is that things become so simple. But simplicity is an interesting thing to think about, because if certain things are simple, it also means that it opens up space for developing something else. If creation of a structure technically is simple, then you have time to think about
what structure exactly do you want to create? Imagine if every time you want to play the piano, you have to build a piano. You would never become a good piano player. But if the piano is there and you can just go there and play, you can do much more. I think having advanced instruments is not something that makes music more easy, but it makes it possible to do a different type of music because certain things don't need to be done by yourself anymore. It's very similar to a lot of other developments. If you think about digital photography, for instance, of course, a lot of people can make just a lot of photos, but a lot of really good people also can make a lot of more good photos. So it's the same thing.
The pandemic, among other things, gave us the opportunity to rediscuss the possibilities related to the fruition of music and the relation between music and the audience. Did you think about these problems in general? Then, is the music getting more private and less public, or is this necessarily public and participated? Or
music was always a social event since the very beginning, since tribal music, since people sitting in front of a campfire and doing stuff, because music has such a powerful emotional quality. Music can provoke feelings, music can help you calm down or excite you. I mean, music is even used in wars to motivate soldiers and to scare your enemies. Music without audience is unthinkable. You need audience. But COVID and the problems with it showed us that there's many ways these days how we can get an audience, and that if you can't have a physical audience next to you, there is an opportunity to use streaming and things like this to still bring your music to the people. And of course, if you are used to perform in front of a few hundred people like here, streaming is a kind of a strange option. But on the other side, if everyone is streaming, then someone from, I don't know, South Africa or Eastern Europe in a small village has the same power to distribute the music than I have in theory. So in a way, the pandemic made it also possible that the playing field becomes more equal, because now we are all on the same little screen.
The technical possibility of the web is giving us the possibility to create and share our own creativity in different way, more and more in this period. Are you interested or attracted specifically by these opportunities?
I mean, I personally, of course, like to be amongst people. Every person wants to be amongst people. It is a difference if I'm sitting next to someone or if I'm on a Zoom meeting. But at the same time, I see that these new ways of transmitting a concert, for instance, also open up new possibilities. As a detail, a lot of the things I do with these old computers are potentially interesting if people could look very close. But someone sitting here in the last row only sees me like this. If I do a streaming, for instance, I can have a camera that is right here. So I can get a more intimate access to the process than I could get with a real audience. And I think this is something that allows us to rethink performance. What is performance? What do you want to see as an audience? So there's also opportunities, of course. Yeah.
And about the fracture between the public and the artwork, did you ever think about how to break this barrier, how to somehow let or to increase the participation of the public to art and music, and your art, your music?
I personally, as a consumer of music or as a consumer of art, I'm actually happy to be passive. So I'm very happy to just sit and listen or sit and watch. I don't need to be interactive. So for me personally, the interaction is not the main focus. But of course, feedback is important. And if I can get feedback, for instance, via social media, if people who come from a different background can comment on what I'm doing and can criticize my work and can say, this was cool, but this was boring, this gave me an idea, then I get a different interaction with the audience than I would get if I'm on a big stage and then I disappear. So in that regard, I think the new ways of interaction are very welcome. Also because the interaction is more direct. There's not so many instances in between. The problem with the internet is that everyone can immediately react. But this is also a power. This is the power that I can write to someone whose work I like and say, this was really great. And sometimes actually great friendships come out of that, or interesting discussions.
Thank you very much, Robert. Very kind.
And now it's raining like hell here.
Yes.